So welcome to Örgryte New Church and the North German Baroque organ, where we are going to get an overview of the composition styles of Matthias Weckmann and examples of how to use the registration patterns here at the organ, the four-manual organ in Örgryte. So with Weckmann we know that he, from his studies with Jacob Praetorius, went into a tradition of becoming an organ preacher. So he was in this tradition of playing, composing in real time, improvising alternating verses in liturgy, to create a musical drama kind of in the liturgy. And it is reported that he learned how to play the praise hymns on the feast days with joyful sounds and figurations. So I take here Nun freut euch lieben Christ gemein, where we could have an 8-foot plano of the great, and then a reed plano in the pedal with the posaune, and trumpet 8/4 Rauschpfeifen mixture. And it's also said that he knew how to use the stops to introduce a repentance hymn, like Ach, wir armen Sünder. And here we will hear dissonances that no organist and composer in Hamburg used prior to Vekman. And they are part of the Seconda Pratica, the Italian practice that he learned as court organist in Dresden, working with Schütz and with the in the new music of the time. And that is what also Davidsson says, that he introduced in the organ playing in Hamburg. He had learned by Praetorius, but when he came back to Hamburg in 1655, all the experiences he had, musical languages, were brought into the organ music. And the old style is to play cantus firmus in the tenor, so we do that with the trumpet and the octave 4, and then we play the upper parts in the repositive with principal 8 octave 4. So very expressive dissonances in the second measure. Starting with just triads, we just take, we keep the same registration. And not the tonic. And even starting on a single note instead of a full harmony is hinting at a recitative in the new style. What is very interesting with Vekman is that we have, for some of his settings, the original registration. And one of them is in the choral cycle, Es ist das Heil uns kommen her, for the third verse, where in the LUMIÈRE tablature it's written that the organist should use again trumpet 8 for the tenor cantus firmus, and the principal 8 alone for the upper part, like strings, and then in the bass, the trumpet 16. So only 3 stops, and of a kind that we would never have any idea of picking really if we just saw the musical texture. But when we try it, we can hear the following. Chamber music-like registration, which resembles very much the orchestration that he explicitly wrote in his 10 instrumental sonatas, where we can see that he used strings, sync players, dulcian, posaune. So I used to refer to this registration as the sonaten registration. And it could be explored even in the beginning of Ach, wir armen Sünder. Let's try it there. And the upper parts, if we want to bring out a little bit more of the dissonances, maybe with the Dulcian 8 of the Brustwerk, and then perhaps instead of the trumpet 16 and the great with the Dulcian 16 of the Rückpositiv in the left hand. So the same tonal concept. Another original Weckmann registration is the Praetorian Registration, I call it, since we have 3 citations of this related to Jacob Praetorius, that Weckmann took this over. And remember, this is a registration that Jacob Praetorius, like Heinrich Scheidemann, learned from Jan Petersson Sweelinck, with the trumpet sync solo of the Oberwerk. The accompaniment in the Rückpositiv on schwache Stimmen or the principal 8 octave 4, and then, which is new in Hamburg, using the pedal division in dialogue or canon or something with the wonderful diminution kind of solo of the right hand with the reed Plano. And both the bass 16/8 and also the treble with the cornet 2-foot. So we take the principal 8 and 4 in the Rückpositiv, we take the trumpet sync stops in the Oberwerk with the flute 4 with the Nasat and the Gemshorn, and then we also take the in the pedal the trumpet 8/4 and the Dulcian 16 and the cornet. So the beginning of this Sextus Versus from Sisters Heidungskommen here. Surprising bass solo with high-pitched treble cornet 2. Anyway, this is the registration that they used. Now the solo enters a few measures later with the right hand, and then we can hear the same pitch with the 8-foot solo and the bass with the 4 and 2-foot reeds. both bass and treble. And we can hear the canon kind of dialogue later in this fantasia, where there's a little 4 imitation in the riposte first. And a wonderful complexity at the end, where it's 2 parts in the right hand, sometimes 3 parts in the left and 2 in the pedal. Ending with a full harmony from the lowest to the highest note. We have 2 more original registrations by Vekman, and one is the Plano Registration, where he says that you should play the cantus firmus not only in the pedal with a full plano, but with also the plano of the manual. So in this setting, Septimus Versus, we have 6 parts, and cantus firmus is one of the 6, but it should be played in 2 divisions, both the pedal and the manual. So first I play it just in the pedal. Now I play it both in the pedal and in the manual. And it is also in the tablature written not as the second second part from the bass, but as the third, and in quite big letters. So visually, the organist is encouraged to think about it as the focal point. Let's move to Magnificat by Weckmann. And we explored a Magnificat by Scheidemann. Now we'll hear the Vekman version of this. So we take Cantus Firmus, it's 5-part, and the Cantus Firmus is the second from the bass, so I think we should use the practice that we explored now, playing it both in the manual and in the pedal. So I take the 8-foot Plano, 8/4 and Rauschpfeife in the Hauptwerk, and I take the Sesquialtera Plano of the Repositiv, so no Scharf. So principal 8, 4, 2 and Sesquialtera. And then I take the trumpet 8 with the Dulcian 16 and then the octave 4 and the Rauschpfeife in the pedal. So we hear the sound of the different divisions. And I divide the parts between the Hauptwerk and the Repositiv. So the Sesquialtera registration has something in common with the Rauschpfeife and enhances the treble, which we will hear at the beginning has ornaments and dissonances of a similar kind, like in Ach, wir armen Sünder. So extreme dissonances. When we start, nobody has composed anything like this time in the organ repertoire. So there we certainly hear the new figures that Mattheson says that he introduced. The forbidden intervals that came from Seconda Pratica with Frescobaldi and suffering as the idea. And why do you bring that into a Magnificat? This composition comes from the years when the 63 and 64, 1663, 64, when the plague descended on Hamburg. And maybe it's a dedication piece to association with Scheidemann, like Peter Dirksen has suggested. The second one is quite nice, almost Scheidemann kind of style, with figuration of zwei Klavier bringing through. The third is very interesting. Here we have the Durezza Ligatore, the dissonant style again, and we could just hear how this works, maybe with the Dulcian, sorry, the Bar 5 and the flute 4, and then the trumpet and the pedal. So 5-part, Weckmann, Scheidemann always 4. Could be played on the principle of 8, of course, as well. So polyphonic style, but starting as a recitative, 1 part and accompaniment coming in. And then the theme enters in the pedal. lots of dissonances of a kind that had not been explored in this alternatim practice in the north. The fourth verse is also very different. Here we have a sense of battaglia almost, so it's, I think, associated with a big Plano, maybe even with the trumpet of the Oberwerk and the Scharf coupling to it, and with the full bass, the Posaune and Plano of that division, maybe also coupling the Brust, but now we have the Oberwerk. So the melody in the treble, which is not the old style, new style, melody in the treble. Changing meter, going into triple meter in the middle, and changing affect. So this is something that Weckmann also uses in Komm Heilige Geist. Totally different character, but changing figures in each phrase according to the text. And the beginning is an exordium, and here, since the melody is also in the treble, I might want to use the Plano of the Brustwerk together with the Hauptwerk, with the sesquialtra. And then in the bass, since there's no cantaciones in the bass, I don't use the mixture. So we can hear Komm, Heiliger Geist, Herrgott, the first verse. And in this hymn, it is so that the three verses that Weckmann has composed, the alternatim verses, has three verses in the hymn. So there's a direct correspondence. So if we want to prove that there is a connection, super imposition of the text here certainly gives confirmation on that. So exordium, then triple meter, and then ignite your burning love in us. We have these fast modulations with sixth chords in the bass and so forth.